Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto video. This is going to be my speculation ahead of Boruto Chapter 68, which is scheduled to come out, I believe, on the 18th of March. So we're about 6 days away from the chapter. I will be reviewing it, hopefully the day it comes out. So definitely check out that when the chapter does release. But for now, we're doing some speculation on it because we had a pretty eventful previous chapter, 67. Which itself was the sort of effective resolution to a major cliffhanger from the chapter before that, 66. So we're now going from, I suppose, the end of a pretty major sequence of events into what I expect to be more of a cooldown kind of chapter, potentially even a cooldown volume, group of 4 chapters. But the fact that Code, and they've immediately set up the whole idea of Code can get into the village now through Shikamaru, who I guess has a claw mark on him, that means they could choose to do that very suddenly if they want to. But I think there's enough that they just sort of dropped on us, where I think they will use the time for at least a couple of chapters to just address where Boruto stands now that, the process is complete. The threat of Momoshiki reincarnating through Boruto's body and Boruto dying because of that is now gone. That Momoshiki is still here and present in the story, but the threat of him seems to be gone. That's a major thing in the plot now. It also reopens up the fact that Code actually now has a choice between, I suppose, Boruto and Kawaki for who to sacrifice to the 10 tails to get the chakra fruit from the tree. But because of Ada's involvement in all of this, it seems like Boruto is the one that Code will have to do that with, because Ada actually wants to meet with Kawaki. And again, that's the interesting thing here, is that they did have Code get away without bringing anyone with him. So we're still kind of waiting for, I assume we will eventually get to see Ada interact with Boruto and or Kawaki, whichever way they're going to do it. But when is that going to happen? Because she seems to always stay back at base. Code is the one who tends to, jump into action. So he needs to go to Konoha to get Amado to remove his limiter. Now, I think they'll hold back on this. I'd be shocked if we jumped into this within the next chapter or two. But, they might choose this to be the point at which the plot really accelerates towards the end. Because I don't think this is the time in the manga to have a large amount of time off from the main plot. Because we're waiting for us to get to this point where, the big event is going to happen. We're waiting for what event sort of causes the time skip to happen. That's something that feels like it does have to happen. But it's interesting because right now the threat is Code. And other than that, the obvious thing we're looking to in the future is Boruto versus Kawaki. But I also don't really see Boruto Kawaki, and however that comes about, as necessarily being the full end game of the series. So I still think there's quite a bit of moving around of things that has to happen before we get anywhere near sort of Boruto endgame. Again, my very early prediction on that is sort of Otsutsuki main family is probably going to be maybe endgame type stuff, and I think that's maybe partially why they're building up towards this first major event in the story, which is that Momoshiki is warning Boruto that event, those blue eyes will take everything from you someday. It's coming up soon. So what's happening there? And Momoshiki is still in the story for a reason, and I think it's because we probably do need to have an Otsutsuki perspective, and as someone who is actually part of the clan on the kind of good guy side. So I'm actually really intrigued to see where they go with the whole Boruto Momoshiki dynamic. One, in terms of just the technical explanation of where does this leave Boruto with regards to his power level, and does he just now have Momoshiki's power? So is he the same as Kawaki, just with Momoshiki's power, or does he have to still train to get to that level? It's it's an interesting one because like they set up that idea before that the one of the karma mark stages allows him to immediately tap into sort of like the basically like Otsutsuki Avatar state style thing of just like all the knowledge and power of the past Otsutsukis, their combat experience now kind of goes through him. Is that now sort of accessible to Boruto now? Where does this leave situations like, can Momoshiki at all take over Boruto's body? We know he can't reincarnate through him, but that whole setup of if Boruto's low on chakra, can Momoshiki come through, is an interesting one. The other point I'd make is just sort of how involved is Momoshiki going to be? Because I wouldn't mind it if they just constantly had him sort of be the kind of devil on the shoulder type thing, where like we see a lot of Momoshiki trying to cause issues and always being there, in that, where they eventually I suppose maybe got to with like Naruto and Kurama, that this is a different angle on that with Boruto and Momoshiki. That Momoshiki effectively is the core of Boruto's Otsutsuki powers, and he can guide him towards them because they used to be his. It's a fun dynamic in that sense, because I can definitely see Momoshiki trying to sort of manipulate Boruto to get what he wants, but I can also see Boruto maybe beginning to get through to Momoshiki, given that Momoshiki is only alive now because of Boruto, and there's no hope of him ever gaining full control, so he either has to sort of manipulate to gain control over Boruto, or just accept Boruto doing what Boruto wants to do. So there's just the character stuff with Momoshiki himself that I think is interesting as well. But other stuff that we have here, obviously the Shikamaru thing is interesting. I like I said, I don't think they'll do that immediately next time out. I think we'll get back to the village and probably have scenes just catching everyone up to speed. It will be interesting to see what they do and maybe don't tell about what happened, in that now that Boruto's alive again, are they just going to tell everyone that Boruto died? Kawaki effectively had to take him out because of this sequence of situations, and then he's alive again because of this situation. Or do they sort of protect Kawaki a little bit by hiding the fact that happened because Boruto made it out? In terms of like, Naruto is probably going to have to communicate with the Kage, and Boruto is seen as this kind of ticking time bomb. That is not the case anymore. In that he's kind of still a threat to the village just because Code wants him specifically for his plans. But the idea that the most powerful character effectively could just, burst out of Boruto is gone. They're the things I'm very interested to see. Like, how much do they tell Hinata and Himawari, Sarada, Mitsuki? That will be interesting to see if they decide to keep any of this or inform everyone. Beyond that, Amado obviously is in play because Code needs the limiter removed. But we're also just, I think, waiting for some sort of a big reveal to drop with Amado at some point. There's the whole, daughter situation. Who is it? Delta? Is it Ada? We're waiting for a lot of that stuff to happen also. But I have a feeling they probably will use a few chapters to just maybe try and get us a little bit more up to speed on where exactly Boruto is with regards to, Momoshiki's still there. What's his level like with the karma? What does it mean that Boruto is an Otsutsuki now? That the extraction process is gone. The thread is gone, so he doesn't need to take the kind of pills and stuff like that anymore. What does that change for Boruto? Because Kawaki, through getting the karma back, seemed to just go from being one of the weaker characters to straight away he's effectively a Shiki level. So Boruto, I think, to create the dynamic with Kawaki where like it's an even fight, Boruto has to be capable of getting to that level. Now, we know Momoshiki had a very strong, powerful moveset, and we've seen it in the few times that he's come out, but there's always been that limitation of Momoshiki can only do what Boruto can do. But now, Boruto is a full Otsutsuki, and Momoshiki is probably going to want him to be as powerful as possible, so interesting. And then the same goes for just stuff like that. Like, will they still view Boruto as a threat? The whole situation, like with Sasuke, where Sasuke as his mentor will, if you ever go out of control, I'll be the one to take you out. Is that needed anymore with this, or are they still going to wait and see? They're the things that I am intrigued by. In that, is Amado going to have any perspective on this when we come back to it, or not? And then, yeah, it's just effectively probably just waiting for whenever Code decides to activate his plan. And I just struggle to see this going on for too long, in that I think Code probably has to act soon to make that happen. So, especially because like Kawaki is so powerful, and it's clear that, you know, Code does not have the advantage over him. He needs the limiter removed to be able to fight properly, because Demon obviously was cleverly used in the previous chapter to counter Kawaki, but that's not going to work every time. Code is going to want to do that himself, and there needs to, I think, be an arc kind of surrounding Code, and there's that lingering plot point of like, if Code succeeds and eats the chakra fruit, he was told by Ishiki before Ishiki fully died that if he eats the chakra fruit, he will become an Otsutsuki as well. So is that a thing we're actually going for, trying to do? Because a lot of the other plots surrounding Code that like, oh, we'll use him as a karma mark vessel, isn't really needed as much anymore, because I guess the other thing with Boruto is that the karma mark now, I guess, is Boruto's to implant in other people if he wants to. Boruto as an Otsutsuki now has that power to use, but will he, will Momoshiki ask him to do that as just a kind of backup plan in case something happens to Boruto? The question is really like, is Code just the villain for now, or is he meant to be here for much, much longer? Now, we haven't really talked much about Kawaki, and again, it is interesting because he, at the same time, did something that I think Naruto understands why he did what he did, but the level to which he went, as was pointed out by Shikamaru, and some of the stuff that he said surrounding it, is that he really is only doing the things that will help him and his goal to protect Naruto. That even Boruto, who he considers his bro, there wasn't necessarily the level of maybe care you would quite expect. So something needs to be addressed in all of this, and however the village tackles it could be interesting in terms of setting up Kawaki to maybe go down a path where he has to go rogue to protect, where Kawaki feels he has to go rogue to protect Naruto. And I'm wondering, will Shikamaru be the one to do that, where Shikamaru will just push Kawaki just a little bit too much and maybe force him away from the village, make him feel unwelcome in some way. We've already done the tease of like Kawaki's going to leave the village, and that's sort of how this whole thing kicked off, this battle out in the woods. But Shikamaru definitely took the approach of being the one to very heavily doubt Kawaki's motives in what he's doing. Now, Naruto, of course, they sort of more positioned as, we can't be seen to do this. He did what he had to do. I still basically care about Kawaki. Let me scroll back to that stuff from this chapter, actually, just so I get the dialogue sort of correct. So what then are you suggesting we drive him off because he's too much for us to handle? You know, Boruto considers Kawaki a brother. He's practically part of our family. No matter what he does or what anyone else says, if his family can't stand by him at a time like this, who's going to take his side? And Shikamaru sort of countered this by saying, like, do you truly feel that way? He, killed your son. And Naruto stopped him before he could say that. So there is, I suppose, a slight sense of Naruto sort of maybe having doubts about Kawaki, but understanding what it would do the sort of character arc that would put Kawaki on if Naruto was to sort of abandon Kawaki. That's the thing in all of this, is that I think Naruto's going to have to realize that, like, are he and Kawaki almost like too close, that if he tries to pull away, that will set Kawaki down the path maybe to becoming some sort of a villain, based again on the positioning of Kawaki in that chapter 1 flash forward scene, which seems to now be that he has sent Naruto somewhere to protect him, even though it's maybe putting the world at risk or something like that. Again, I don't think that's going to happen immediately, but I think they might do the start of some of this stuff here, where if they do tell everyone, how's Sarada Mitsuki going to react to what Kawaki did? Is everyone going to have a similar approach to Naruto, or is everyone going to have a similar approach to Shikamaru? And then there's the other factor, which is that until we get the scope of Boruto's powers, Kawaki is the most powerful character in the Leaf Village. So even if they feel they have to stop him, can they? And it feels like using Naruto and how close Naruto is to Kawaki and how Kawaki views Naruto is maybe the only way to control Kawaki. So that's where Boruto again and where he's at with regard to his power level is going to be key. So I do think most of the next chapter is probably just going to be getting across those dynamics. It's going to be, I suppose, a little bit of Naruto and Shikamaru continuing their conversation from this from the previous chapter, but maybe including more characters in that. It's going to be, what is the Boruto Kawaki dynamic now that everything has sort of resolved itself in this way? How do the other characters kind of fit into that? And I suppose maybe right as we're getting to some sort of a resolution and we think things have calmed down, they'll probably use that as the opportunity to make Code strike. Now, will they do anything unique with that? I'm not really sure. The thing is that the combination of Code basically being able to turn up in the Leaf Village whenever he wants and having Ada to help him means he can just get, like, effectively engineer a situation where it's Shikamaru is the only one in the room with Amado, and he just comes out of Shikamaru, grabs Amado and leaves, and Shikamaru, as we've seen, isn't strong enough to combat Code, so he just has to wait for that opportunity when Shikamaru is like the only one around Amado and he effectively has what he wants. And that's going to be interesting because Amado suddenly being with Ada and with Code is also going to be very interesting. But there's a few other things that are still going on in the background. Like there was the tease a while ago at this point that like another kind of cyborg character is going to be reintroduced or something like that. Is it going to be the return of Delta or someone else? We're not really sure. Again, Amado stuff still remains rather mysterious, but I'll wrap it up there before I start sort of going in circles. But I'm excited for what comes next. I just hope that they have a plan to, I suppose, keep the pace up. Because I liked how much we got done in the last chapter, that unlike a lot of Boruto chapters, it actually felt like the last chapter was kind of packed with content throughout. I hope we keep that up and don't get back into the more like, yeah, there's only like 10 significant pages in this 40-page chapter. The rest you can really skim through and it doesn't mean all that much. That's what we need to avoid. But, you know, we also have to be aware. We're going to slow down a little bit because we've just had the big action scene. But we need to probably get back into the action sooner than we think. I do think the setup for this is that like a time skip is not coming until after like Code gets his limiter or whatever happens there. I have very little speculation for what exactly the whole, you know, these blue eyes will take everything from you thing actually is. I assume it relates to the Jogan, but so far what we've seen from like early Boruto anime, the Jogan is just sort of a powerful thing that Boruto has, and it seems to apply energy and like enhance his abilities. And it's almost been set up as the thing that will like oppose the Otsutsuki aspect of him. So I'm not really sure. Is he focusing really specifically on just those eyes, on his eyes as like some sort of symbolism, or does he mean it in the literal case of like you have special eye powers? But it's only in one eye, so how does that exactly work? That's what kind of interests me about that. That again, Momoshiki seems to have the ability to see people's fate. So, what's the situation here? That your eyes will take everything from you. I don't know what way to interpret that, but I'm guessing this will be the big thing in Boruto, where does that, what happens there, this incident, the thing they're calling like that in bold letters, does it deliver based on what our expectations are for it? Who knows? But that's all my speculation for the video. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think is going to happen in chapter 68? But yeah, other than that, I will be trying to do my review the day the chapter comes out. I usually get it up the day it comes out, so I assume I will be able to this time out. So keep an eye on the channel next week for that review. Other than that, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.